Well, yes, I know that Senator Sabi Abdullahi has some reactions to what the lawyer has said, but, you know, I'm just wondering, I do recall in hard copy's interview with the Senate President asking if the Senate will go to court to challenge what it is that the executive has done, especially with the continued stay of Mr. Magu as acting chair of the EFCC. And the Senate President did say then that they did not have, their powers were not in contention. They had exercised their powers and they were not going to go to court. But you seem to be very happy that this particular judgment, even in quotes now, because it's not clear if it's a judgment or an opinion of court, you know, has clarified certain things. Would you go then to clarify if indeed, you know, Mr. Magu can keep acting in acting capacity despite all that has happened or transpired so far?
Well, the simple answer I will give here is that's not our work.
Whose work is it?
Well, that is the business of the executive. Our own, they are the ones to execute whatever, either there is a court judgment within this context, they are the ones to take the guide.
But you feel you're the ones who feel scandalized that he is continuing to act despite the fact that you have rejected him.
No. Remember, even after we have rejected him, they said he was going to continue to act. And I think that was the period you asked the Senate President, and he gave you that answer. Now, this issue only got messier when the statement attributed them to the acting vice president to the effect that they ought not to have even brought all those confirmation. And I think it was on that note that we debated the matter in the chamber and came to that resolution that until that statement is withdrawn, we're not going to, you know, waste our time making confirmation that at the end of the day you say we don't have powers. And I think that is a different point. But permit me at this stage to say, you see, whatever we do, we have to also look at the general polity. Here we are in the university, for example, you fail the first year, you fail after a particular time. What is it? You will be advised to withdraw, isn't it? If you repeat a class 1, 2, 3, there is at least some standard. So the point I'm making here is, you see, in whatever we do, we have to realize that some other people, we give them some standard of our own. But when it comes to the issue of governance, we try to look for all manners of ways to perpetrate our own interest. And I think it is not good for us. My take simply is that this judgment is not as if we are celebrating. There is nothing to celebrate. But what we are saying is that there is a problem, and we want the executive to take this window and look at this in court opinion and do the needful so that we can make progress.
Senator, on that very issue of this notion of the perpetuation of interests, I was listening very carefully, as we all were, to the Senate President's comments. One of the things he mentioned when he was talking about the unfeasibility of this idea that it's against Magu as a person is that, you know, what control would an EFCC chairman have potentially over a case in court? But we also know that there's a history under various EFCC chairmen of the past where they would take cases and use their investigators and prosecutors to deconstruct a case so that the judge has no case to really rule on. I want to ask you, sir, when you look at the history and you say if the Senate President is correct when he says that it's about the institution and not people, when we looked at the situation the Senate President was facing at the CCT, we saw that when he went, about 60 or 70 senators went with him. That was before the facts were known about the case, guilty or not. We saw that even within the Senate, they were looking at changing the law to take the powers of the appointment of the CCT chairman from the SGF and domicile it elsewhere where the Senate would have more control. These are issues that Nigerians are looking at and saying, look, it's about the protection of the interests of the lawmakers rather than the strengthening of institutions. What do you have to say about that?
Well, interesting. But let me tell you one thing. The Senate President was taken to the CCT because some people felt he ought not to be the Senate President. And against all odds, he emerged as the Senate President. That was his crime. And we felt the Constitution empowers us to choose our own leadership by our own self. It's our inalienable right. It's our own vested right. And it is within that context that we felt if we are the ones who selected him and elected him to be our Senate president, we have to stand by him all the way. And we still stand by him till today, until the end of this, our own 8th assembly. And I want to say very clearly that there is nothing wrong about that, because we felt he is our leader. And we have to defend our leader. Without a leadership, we cannot perform. And let me say clearly that we have no regret to date on this, because he has given us credible leadership, focused leadership, energetic leadership, to the extent that today our performance in terms of the number of bills, in terms of our intervention on very serious national matters, in terms of the economy, we have done tremendously well. And even those that we met in the Senate who are with us from the 7th Assembly to date, they confirmed that the work rate in this Senate, definitely, due to the leadership provided by Senator Bukola Saraki, is tremendous.
Well, Senator Sabi Abdullahi, we have to thank him most kindly for coming on Sunrise Daily. He is the Chairman, Senate Committee on Media and Publicity. Well, the program will continue in just a moment while we watch this report of the launch of the National Intervention Movement. Please stay with us.